Welcome, friends, to another Wolff Responds. I call this one on our agenda now, stagflation. So let me start by making clear what that word means. The first letters of it, stag, refer to the word stagnant. A stagnant pool doesn't move, doesn't change. A stagnant economy is another one that not moving, not changing. It's when jobs are not available, when people are starting to get laid off, when production is being cut back. That's where we are right now in the United States, and virtually everyone thinks it's going to get worse before it gets better. We are heading into a period of a stagnant economy. But at the same time, we have inflation, rising prices. Sometimes our economy gives us a choice. We have stagnation, that's bad, but at least the prices aren't going up. Or we have inflation, that's bad, but at least jobs are available. But sometimes, when the capitalist economy we live in is particularly poorly led by business and by government, well, then we get the two bad things at the same time, stagnation and inflation, and we call that, by clamping the two words together, stagflation. And that's what we're heading into in the autumn of 2025 and the winter of 2026. And I want to talk to you about why that is and what that means and how to understand it so you're not overwhelmed by it, or at least less so because you understand. Where does the stagnation part come from? Well, the answer lies partly in the nature of capitalism as a system and partly in particular things going on now. So I'll start with the general real quickly. Capitalism is a system for 300 years now, starting in England, spreading to Europe, and then global, which has had an economic downturn on average every 4 to 7 years. The system is monumentally unstable. If you lived with a roommate as unstable as capitalism, you would have moved out long ago. Every 4 to 7 years, on average, millions of people are suddenly thrown out of their jobs. Businesses close down or cut back. Governments don't have taxes because of that, so they cut back on public programs. It's awful. Now, the last few we've had are on schedule. We had one in the spring of 2020, and we called that the dot-com crisis. And we had another one in 2008, and we called that the subprime mortgage crisis. And then we had another one in 2020, and we called it the COVID crisis. Yep, coming roughly every 4 to 7 years. That's an average. And hurting us badly, hurting some of us catastrophically. And we're heading for another one now. And you know how I know it? You know how all the financial press is talking about it? The Wall Street Journal, The Economist, the Financial Times? Because the last one happened in 2020, and we're now 5 years and a half beyond it. We're due 4 to 7 year average. May not come this month, may not even come next month. It's coming. And recent statistics, as I'll tell you in a moment, suggest it's coming fast. Unemployment right now is 4.3%. Since we have 160 million people in the labor force in this country, 4.3% of them are unemployed. That's 7 million people looking for work, unable to find it. We know from the Federal Reserve that about 25 to 30% of our tools, equipment, machines, factory floor, store floor, it's all empty, not being used. So we have 7 million people who want a job. We have all the tools, equipment, and raw materials for them to work with and on. And we sure need the output to deal with the poverty that haunts us. But we have a capitalism can't put these things together. That's the deep reason why we face stagflation now. It's built in to the capitalist economy. But then there are particular reasons why it's happening now. Those have a lot to do with the policies of the Trump administration. The number one of those is the tariff. The whole world is more unified economically than it's ever been. That is, a larger proportion of the goods and service each of you consumes come from somewhere else in the world. Or if they're made in the United States, they use parts that come from other parts of the world. And the same is true everywhere else in the world. So imposing a tax on the goods and services that come into the United States is the United States government interfering in global markets. Used to be in America that the government was told, don't do that. Used to be the Republicans were the ones who said it most often. The government shouldn't interfere in the wonders of the market. Well, Mr. Trump doesn't seem to agree, and the rest of the Republicans have fallen over like dominoes to agree with Mr. Trump. He's interfering left and right, putting tariffs all over the place. And what does it mean? It means that companies abroad don't know what their market in America is, because whatever they ship here, French wine, Japanese electronics, coffee from Brazil, whatever it might be, the price to an American has to include the new tariffs, that's a tax on imports, that Mr. Trump not only imposes, but often a week later takes back, and often a week later cuts in half, and often a week later doubles. No one can plan. And so companies around the world are changing where they sell their goods. They're not going to do business in the United States. They're going to find more reliable, more stable customers everywhere else. And because the United States is not the dominant economy in the world it once was, not by a long shot, they know there are huge economies around the world that they can focus on instead. And the number one beneficiary, China. So we are having less business. And companies are not coming to the United States because they know that with the higher prices we all have to pay as the tariffs move into the cost of what we buy every day, because the market is unstable here, they're not moving here. Mr. Trump may tell you they've promised to do that, but I'm here to tell you, promise is one thing, action is another. And then if you add that remarkable choice of the ICE people to invade and arrest all the South Koreans in that battery plant in Georgia, you know the message you sent to South Korea, one of the richest economies in the world? Don't come to the United States. They tell you, please come, we'll help you. And when you set up a business, the ICE army will come and arrest 400 people, send them back out of the country, cripple that investment. No, no, no. The investments aren't coming, and that's why the job situation is getting worse and worse, and has been now for many months. Stagnation. Now, what about inflation? We've had it bad up to 8 or 9%. Now it's only 3. We congratulate ourselves as a nation. We brought it down to 3. But 3 is still very bad because it's coming on top of those much higher prices that never went down again. So it's 3% on top of an already high price. The majority of Americans go into the supermarket or the department store and their hearts sink. They get unhappy and depressed because they're watching a display of all the things they can't afford anymore. Bloomberg did a remarkable statistical study that was released on the 16th of September. It showed that half of all consumers' spending in this country is done by the richest 10% of the people. The other 90% of the people do the other half of the spending. In other words, half of the business in this country has the employer looking at the 10% richest people because those are buying half of what he has to sell. Of course he cares more about the rich. Of course their stores are more elegant. Of course their service is much better. We, the rest of us, the 90%, the vast majority, can't afford as the prices go up. Only the richest 10% can. And that's how this economy is working. No wonder the people at the top, the 10%, keep telling each other, the economy is great, the stock market is booming. It is for them. But for the other 90%, make no mistake, if you don't think the economy is in good shape, you're right. The people at the top are wrong. You're right because you're the majority. What you are feeling and seeing is what most people feel and see. And I'm here to tell you, as a professional economist, the condition of the bottom 90% of the American people is deteriorating, and it is deteriorating consistently and quickly. It's not an economy that works for everybody, not even close. And now the final important point for you to understand. Who is responsible for the stagnation? Who is responsible for the inflation? And therefore, who's responsible for the stagflation we are now entering into? Well, it's the same group. It's called the employer class of this capitalism. It's the employers who decide whether or not to create jobs. They want us to love them when they do. Okay. But then let's be clear. If you want the credit when you create jobs, you get the blame when you don't. And you're not doing it now. You haven't been for months. So the blame has to go to the people who decide whether or not to hire more or less or make no change at all. Just like it's the employer who decides abroad or here, move a factory from there to here, from here to there. That's employers who decide all of that. So the question of jobs, and therefore the question of stagnation, is a question that is decided by the employer class. And according to the United States Census, employers are 3% of our people. The other 97% are not employers. And that matters because it's the employers who make the decisions. Move the factory, don't move the factory, hire more workers, don't hire more workers. Let me turn then to inflation. Who determines the price of a box of cereal or a rubber tire or a software program? Is it the employees of the companies that make these things? No. It's the employers, those 3% again. They set the prices. We pay them, but we don't decide them. The employer decides them, and the employer picks the price that's the most profitable to them. If fewer of us can buy it, they won't care if the few that can still afford it can pay higher prices. So they raise the price when it's profitable. Notice, the employer class, a tiny minority of our society, determines whether we have stagnation, determines the prices we confront, and actually gets us at both ends. The employer decides whether I have a job and what income I get from it. And the employers decide what I have to pay when I spend the money I earn on the goods I need to live. They get us coming and they get us going. Capitalism, the name tells it all. It's a system run by and for the capitalists. And that's just another word for the employer. So if you're not an employer, you're not in the club that runs the show. If interventions and comments like these strike you as useful, please share this video with others, friends, relatives, co-workers. That's why we make them. And of course, if you can help defray the costs that we incur to do it, that would be enormously appreciated as well. Just go to our website, democracyatwork.info, and it'll be easy for you to see how to do that. Thank you.